going on, everybody? You already know what time it is. Podcast time. Episode 2 of The House. We have Rebecca Langweber from Langweber Law Group out in Merrick, New York, here today with us. Rebecca, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. You know, everybody always says real estate and the attorney kind of go like hand in hand together. And you hear horror stories. People say, what do they say? My experience was either horrendous or my buying experience was fantastic. There's usually like no middle ground, at least from what I hear. So I always thought that getting with a good attorney really makes the whole process for everybody a lot smoother.
I like to think so.
So obviously, I just wanted us, before we get into it, let's dabble into, give a little background where you guys came from. I know you guys, when I first met you, we were in Wampa, now you're in Merrick. Yep. How the Langweber group really came together.
So I actually come from a family of lawyers. Both my mother and my father are lawyers. They're partners in a firm, and I started in 2014. Real estate is the only area of law that we practice, probably 95% of what we do, and then some related corporate and estate stuff as well.
And mention that is a key component. I had to cut you off there because
Josh has learned.
I have learned when you have clients that say, oh, I have a family friend that's an attorney, they're going to do my deal. And they are a divorce attorney, and they've done one or two, real estate deals in their life, and it's absolutely horrendous to deal with.
It's horrendous. The real estate is what I like to call a full-time job. There are so many intricacies of real estate that if you do not do this, in my opinion, all the time or regularly, there are so many loopholes, so many pitfalls, so many things to think about. Oil tanks buried, something maybe an attorney wouldn't necessarily note in an inspection report, or taking over the tax grievance proceeding is not something maybe somebody would think about, but you do this every single day, you learn. We always say you only make a mistake once, right? It's the same thing in real estate. You learn about something once, you carry it on for every client.
Right, you're always learning, you're always figuring out, even if you didn't, there's probably plenty of deals that come up and the first thing you ever seen, same thing I had ever seen, first time things, but there are people that dabble in the real estate full time, they're definitely going to be able to get you the answer or the correct response rather than somebody that, is dealing with a husband and wife getting divorced.
Yeah. I mean, we have, we call it our purple card. It's a purple card, and it's the list of the top 10 or 12 hot item real estate issues. Solar panels, who owns the property, whether it's an estate, or the 7 siblings of someone who passed away, or you've had that experience before. There's just so many intricacies to a real estate transaction. So my favorite is when someone calls me and says, "Hi, I need an attorney for the closing." The closing is the easiest part. It's getting to the closing, protecting the client, whether they be the seller or the buyer. The closing is not the part that you hire me for. You hire me to get you to the closing, which is not always that easy these days.
Right. So rewind for a minute. So you guys, your parents started the firm together.
Sure.
And they started it in Wampa where we first met? Or?
We actually started it in my house that I grew up in.
So they were doing it from your
my dad never practiced. He owns a body shop. And that was his family business. But he went to law school. That's where they met. And my mom started as a law guardian for children in family divorce law situations. That got old, depressing, challenging, very hard. And she ended up as the attorney for the SBA, the real estate attorney for the Sergeants Benevolent Association. Really? So she became a real estate practice overnight.
So she just decided, it just fell into it basically.
I think it was a long time coming, but it was just the perfect connection.
Interesting.
And real estate has been the game ever since. So we moved to our new office in Merrick on Merrick Avenue in July, this past July, and it's been wonderful. It's like in a cool town. There's a bunch of businesses nearby. It's been really great.
You have parking for the first time?
We have parking. We have parking, which is everybody's favorite, but beautiful new modern office.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's just great.
So I guess, we just said the closing part's the easiest part. Mm-hmm. So what people don't understand is what happens prior. When they come in, they sign the contracts, they leave their down payment. Contracts get signed, they're fully executed, they're starting the mortgage process, and they're like, all right, we'll hear from our attorney when, at the end.
No.
But
not if I'm the attorney. I think that is a very big misconception, that you just sign the contract and move on. it could be anything. It could be a title issue. It could be a mortgage issue. It could just be, a strategy issue of, okay, you're moving from this lease to this house. How are we going to get you, closed on time? And the way I kind of tailor my representation, and I just said this to someone earlier today, I said, if you want me to hold your hand the whole transaction, I'm happy to do that. If you never want to hear from me until the end, I'm also happy to do that. We call it concierge style representation because whatever you want, you will get. Absolutely. We laugh, like one of my famous concierge style is an elderly client who didn't drive. I picked her up and drove her to the building.
Door-to-door service.
I mean, it was awkward and it was what it was, but I mean, that's...
You did what I had to do
I
to get it
know
done.
not a lot of real estate attorneys can say that they've gone above and beyond like that,
Right. Gives you that name though,
Absolutely, I like to think so. One of our sellers, and actually it was a client that we had, a mutual client, they wanted to move to another state before the closing was really ready to happen. So we pre-signed and I closed it for them with the power of attorney. And it's just whatever you want it to be. And I think people don't really get what that means in the beginning when I say that, but they see it. If you want to text me after work, fine. If you want to call me every day to get a status update, fine. It is whatever you want it to be.
Right.
It's
So
not cookie cutter.
for the people that don't understand that they moved out of the state and they had a power of attorney, like what really is a power of attorney? Like what is the responsibilities of that? How does that go about?
So if I do everything right, I never need the power of attorney, which is great. We basically pre-sign all of the closing documents so that it's like you're there. I have your ID, I have your signature, and then I actually go to your bank and deposit your money for you should you need it. I'll overnight you the checks, whatever. We call it closing like a rock star, but rock stars don't go to real estate closings, and technically sellers don't need to either.
Right.
Especially in the age of COVID where
everything's virtual.
No one went anywhere for a
anywhere.
while. Yeah, you see that a lot. Sellers don't show up, or buyers close with a power of attorney. And I mean, anybody can do a power of attorney. It's not anything special for a seller or a buyer, but sellers typically do that, and that's another service that we always offer. And that also makes us able to close anywhere in New York State, because there's plenty of times I don't even meet the client until the end, or maybe I met them in the beginning and they're not going to come to me. Yeah,
you didn't meet them at the end.
Yeah.
So when people, most people, obviously, most sellers, I would assume, for our bracket of housings that they're buying, they're going to show up for the closings for the most part.
People like to.
They like to, congratulate the buyer.
Or
They've had all the memories
yeah.
in this house or whatever. When they sign contracts, how does the process start, on the attorney side, and when you're working with the client? I don't even know this answer because, basically I have a client, they ask for a referral for an attorney, I hand it off, I say, this is who I would recommend. And if they use you, you take over at that point. I kind of did my job. I passed the baton, and then we kind of, we stay on pace together of the whole transaction. But what really happened from the time they get an accepted offer, their inspection's done, my job is complete, we worked out all the details, I send you the paperwork, and then you speak with the attorney. Then what happens?
So before I tell you then what, the other thing is that a lot of my clients find me before that.
Okay.
And it's very common for the real estate agent to be the first one to get to the client. Just typically.
Right, makes sense.
Sometimes the lender, if they're pre-approved before they come to you,
right.
Generally speaking, you're the first. I have a lot of clients, especially through social media, Facebook pages, stuff like that, who are doing real estate 101 with me beforehand. And that is just a free, hour consultation.
So they're literally just asking you,
I'll Zoom with them. I just did one on Monday. Yeah, we just Zoom. They're not ready to buy, but they're going to be.
Right.
They're pre-approved. And I sit with them so they really know the then what before it happens.
So they're kind of understanding the process.
And I think it makes your job easier too, because they know about COs, they know about mortgages, they know about title reports, they know about it. So I've been doing that a lot, sure. Especially it's taking so much longer to find a house as a buyer. The more you know in advance, you really have a lot of time if it's going to take you a little while to find
absolutely,
a house.
for sure.
So flashing forward to the then what, I do review the inspection report, whether before the contract comes or kind of with the client at the contract signing.
Right.
We've been doing contract signings every which way. In person, which is always the easiest, but Zoom, which is cool too.
Yeah.
I mean, it works. I share my screen, we do closing costs, we do everything. And when we sit down to go over the contract, the closing cost is what I start with.
Okay.
I think the money is the scariest thing for most people.
Because they don't understand where it's all going, or how it's all divided up. Or...
What am I going to, really the big question is, what am I putting down on contract and how much am I going to need at the end? And you do this enough, you're able to estimate, it goes by the taxes and the county and stuff like that, but the money is where we start. And if they're not
comfortable with the money.
Yeah, if they're white and they look like a ghost just walked by, we start over and we say, okay.
So when they go pale, you know you're in for
That's
it.
when I know. That's when I know. But I always say, if you're okay with the money, the rest of this is going to be smooth. And
Gotcha.
so we sign the contract. Once the seller signs the contract, is firm. That's when everybody's all excited
That's
that
when
we're
the party
getting
begins.
somewhere. Yeah, we're getting somewhere. And then we order a title report. They work on the loan. Well, I don't have much to do with the loan process.
Right.
That's really between the borrower and the lender.
And the attorney orders the title from whatever company, like you can
Yeah.
order from really anywhere.
From
Obviously,
anywhere.
you know, like I refer you because I trust your work and what you do, just like you have your title companies
Exactly.
that you work with.
Yeah, we usually work with 7 different companies. We like to keep it rotating. We
Right.
never put all of our eggs, any one place. Plenty of our title companies have strengths depending on where the property is or what kind of the property that we're talking about. But yeah, we rotate, and yeah, I'm only as good as the people that I work with.
Of
So
course.
the other thing is that title is so regulated by the government and
Right.
statutes and stuff like that. So it really doesn't matter. And I have that a lot where people say, "Well, my brother is a title person." That's fine. We always use the people that are either clients or referral sources want us to use. But it's very regulated, so it really doesn't matter too much.
Right.
It's based on your purchase price, it's based on your loan amount. So
So when you
whoever
run
I
title,
feel like,
no. So basically, whoever you feel like using
Whoever
at that
you feel like
point,
using
for the
at
most
that
part,
day.
you're going to get, no matter who does it, you're really going to get the same report.
well, I would never use a title company that charged more than any other title company.
Right, because you're getting the same
Just
thing
like
for the most
anything
part.
else, absolutely.
So I guess what are like the main things that you're looking out for, like on a title report when that comes in for the buyer?
Sure. So a title report is quite literally a report searching the purchaser, the seller, and the home itself, the land.
Okay.
So for example, if you have a mortgage, that's going to come up on a title report. We also search the taxes. So, there's always that question of what do the sellers really pay in taxes,
Right.
whether they have exemptions or anything.
So that'll give you the
like
true
that.
taxes with nothing
True
on.
taxes,
Okay.
yeah. And there are a lot of resources nowadays to figure out taxes and stuff before you sign the contract, but we're
Right.
never really sure.
That'll give you to the penny, basically.
To the penny. We end up in a situation like right now where tax numbers aren't out yet for the next period, which is fine. But the tax search in the title report is not messing around.
Right there.
Those are the numbers. We also search certificates of occupancy, which is huge. Housing and building department violations, if there are any, as well as bankruptcy searches, the terrorist list. We search.
So they literally go in depth,
Patriot Act.
really.
Yes, everything. Yeah.
So they really go from soup to nuts. You're going to find out anything that is basically anybody that's involved in this deal. You're getting their background check, basically.
It's like
It's basically a background check for
on
the
a
house.
That's a good way of thinking about it. And that search is the only way that we can make sure title's clear.
Right.
Now, one of the common misconceptions about it is you technically don't need title insurance as a purchaser in New York State. It's optional. You don't have to be insured.
But
if you're my
every single
client, you
person,
have to be insured.
I mean, at the end of the day, 99% of people are probably taking title insurance.
I would say 99.9.
So,
Absolutely.
I mean, it really. And what is the reason why people take title insurance?
To have clear title so that no one can knock on your door the day after closing and say, I had $1 million judgment against the seller, this is my house, and I own it.
So basically that title insurance, you're free and clear. If someone comes knocking on your door that the title company missed something, it has no bearing on you.
Claim against the title company.
Gotcha.
So from the day you buy it back in time, I always make the joke, if you go out and get a judgment the day after the closing, that's on you. But all judgments and stuff like that from
Prior.
the day prior, yes, absolutely.
Gotcha. All right, that's pretty
Yeah.
interesting, actually.
Yeah.
So after the title is done, there's obviously two things that can come up. Either it's going to be clean, and that's makes your job a lot easier, and
Love that.
you right to the next step.
Yeah.
What happens? What are the? I guess what usually pops up? On the majority, if you do see something, like what are the top 3 or 4 that pop up, and what happens at that stage?
So I would say parking tickets in the city seem to be a big one for some reason. Whether you knew about your ticket and you ignored it, or it blew off your windshield and you had no idea you had a
Right.
ticket and you don't believe me and I tell you to look it up and it's your license plate. That's something silly,
That actually happened when I bought my house.
There
I
you
didn't know
go.
I had a ticket, and it was like a $65 ticket. Like, you had a ticket. I'm like, what are you talking about? And it was a $65 ticket that ended up costing me like $230 with all the late fees. I'm like,
So,
all right, I guess I'll pay this.
Pay your tickets, yeah. That's a silly one. That doesn't happen in Nassau County, but it's a city thing. And I would say the second most common thing, especially in Long Island,
Right.
is out of possession. So you'll see in the time frame of the transaction, we wait for a mortgage commitment. And you've seen me lobby you for the mortgage commitment.
Left and right, yes.
I live by the mortgage commitment. So when a mortgage commitment comes in, it'll say, congratulations, borrower, we're going to make you a loan. But sometimes it'll say, except for, we still need
A, B, and C.
A, B, and C. A, appraisal, always.
Right.
Appraisal assigns the value of the house as per the lender. I must have an appraisal before I consider a commitment firm.
Okay.
And once I have the commitment, I order a survey. Survey is an overhead picture of the structures as related to the boundaries.
So you're getting all the property lines,
everything. The biggest, I would say number 2, maybe even before parking tickets, biggest title issue is out of possession, which means fence inside the line.
Okay, so if like you have a neighbor and the fence been there, it could be 6 inches, it could be 3 feet, and if that comes up, it's obviously the buyer has to be okay, basically, that do I want this property or not?
The problem becomes, so there's a one foot margin, meaning margin of error. So no fence company generally wants to see your survey when they come put your fence up. So there's always a little bit of a
they give you a little wiggle room.
Fine. Up to 12 inches. Anything more than 12 inches, we have a problem. Now, it's not always just that the buyer can say okay. The buyer can say okay, fine, we don't care that the fence. The problem is the title company. The title company will not insure you to the boundaries if there's a risk your neighbor's going to claim that land as theirs.
Gotcha.
If you use somebody's land for more than 10 years, you have the right to claim it as your own.
So if that fence was there for 10 years, at that point you could say, this is my property, it's no longer your property.
And the common thing that people think is, oh my God, my fence is on my neighbor's property. That's the neighbor's problem.
Right.
It's when your own land is cut off by somebody else using the land and the fence with no access to it. So I would say that's really probably number 1.
So
title issue.
At that point, what happens?
So we have a couple choices. And this is one thing that is an overarching theme, definitely in my office and let alone everybody else's, is the clients make the decision. So my job is to tell you what the story is.
At the end of the day, it's their choice.
And you make a decision on what you want to do. So I have a closing tomorrow. Out of possession, I think it's 6 feet. It's a property upstate, but it's upstate. It's
so at 6 feet, you have like 17 acres, and you don't care about it.
You don't care about your 6 feet. He's closing without it, and that's his decision to make.
Right.
But generally speaking, the seller can go to the neighbor and get either an affidavit or an agreement that says, I'm using your land, but I promise I'm not going to claim it, and then the title company will insure to the boundaries, even if the fence. You could also move the fence.
Right. So
if you can move the fence.
I guess most people, if that comes up, they get an affidavit. If anything, they'll usually get an affidavit and call it a day and move on.
So an affidavit is not as strong as a boundary line agreement, which is literally recorded at the county clerk, showing that everybody knows exactly.
See, I never even heard of that. I heard of an affidavit, never heard about.
Affidavit is like a Band-Aid.
Okay.
I don't like Band-Aids for real estate
Eventually they rip off?
Yeah, they fall off. Boundary line agreement, and it literally has transfer documents, just like a real closing does, where they kind of give each other the right to use it. Yes, to me that's the only acceptable answer.
Wow. All right. So, all right. Say we work out all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, we do all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
We do all the time.
So, title's, you work out that stuff now. Title's clear. What happens after that?
If there's a lender involved, meaning it's not cash, we wait for the lender to be cleared to close. So people commonly say, oh, I have a pre-approval. I can buy this house. That is the beginning stages of it. The commitment is issued once an underwriter has reviewed everything, tax returns, pay stubs,
the whole 9,
all of it. And then the clear to close comes when everything has been reviewed. So we need clear title, clear to close from the lender, then we set a closing date.
Okay. So realistically, they're getting appraisals, they're getting titles, and you're really looking at all of that stuff.
100%.
I guess so. The major thing that really plays into the attorney factor is the title aspect.
Yeah.
It's like their number 1 thing.
Right.
I guess title and survey.
Sure. And then really even the contract. I mean, sellers' attorneys prepare contracts. So when I'm the buyer's attorney, my job is to make that contract more friendly for the buyer, whether that be timeframes or things that I have to add to protect.
Right. I guess that makes a lot of sense.
Buyer.
So, like, if we rewind to the beginning, when the contracts are really being drawn up, obviously being in the business, I always see the attorneys. Oh, we have basically this set. What do they call it? They have the set contract that they use, and they'll fill out, a couple different people's names, and they send it out, and then they wait for corrections to be done.
So that's definitely true. You'll hear it constantly. I'm saying I'm waiting on my accepted changes, waiting on my changes to be approved by the seller's attorney. And then vice versa, when I am the seller's attorney, my contract is very seller friendly. My good example of where I kind of come into the contract phase is, for example, in a condo. I have a client buying a condo right now in Melville, and the contract came, the form, a typical form contract that everybody uses, and then most people add a rider to it, which is like extra stuff, things that have come up, whether maybe since the form or just more creative issues. Where you had a problem before, you add it to your rider. And a couple of the paragraphs that I had to add were about the condition of the unit. So no bed bugs, no alterations made without
that was
the
in the contract. Like,
this
no
is something
bugs.
I added to protect my client, because so normally on a condo you can read minutes, which we won't get into the due diligence.
That's a whole nother
on
conversation.
A condo or co-op. We could do that for an hour, but there are certain things that you do, and minutes is one of them, where you read board minutes about what's going on in the condo. This particular condo that my client's buying wouldn't let us read minutes. So there was no way I could make sure any of these things have or have not happened.
Right.
So bed bugs was one of them. Noise complaints, because I don't want my client to buy something where the person upstairs is extremely loud.
And they have no rules of saying they can't be.
Exactly. So I have the seller represent that none of this is going on. No alterations. You didn't knock down a wall without anybody knowing about it.
Right.
So the protection of the client is my number one job.
Of course.
Or the advisement. So I typically tell people I'm an advisor. I don't care if we buy this house. I don't care if you want to buy it with the out of possession. Personally, it doesn't matter to me. You just have to know.
They're there to pay you for the knowledge and tell you at the end of the day.
To tell you.
They get to choose.
100%.
I don't care about that. Like, we have a client that literally, the title report came back with a million things on it. And they said, I don't care. I'm dying in this house, basically.
And I said, okay.
Let's move forward.
It gives me a stomachache. It keeps me up at night. But yeah.
Right. Like, you swallow that pill. Like, even though in your mind, I'd rather them not do this because, you never know what may happen down the line. But it's the client's choice.
It's very hard to take the compassion out of it. This is something that we talk about a lot, where I can't put my opinion in people's head. It's not up to me if I think you should buy this house, or if I think any of these things. It's not up to me about my opinion, but you do try to guide people.
Right.
Because it is scary, right? How many people get an offer accepted that, oh my God, I don't even know where to
turn,
I don't know what to
do,
or it's all right, one thing at a time, and we kind of break it down a little bit. It's
the
biggest purchase of your life for 95 people who buy houses, right?
I would say probably more.
There are most people who are not buying things more expensive than their home.
Right.
So
biggest asset, biggest investment, biggest
let's
everything.
dial it down a little bit. We're going to go through it, and it'll be. My new thing is no one's ever died from buying a house. I have never heard of anyone who's passed away from the home buying process, and it's doable. It's all doable, but it's new. It's new to people, or people who have bought 40 years ago, and they're selling and buying again now.
But things have changed. I would say a pretty good amount.
Changed, so it's fine. Just kind of calm it all down. It's not that deep. We're gonna get through it.
Right.
Think about how many people have done it. I've done it. You've done it. We've all done it.
Right.
So it's fine. And that's a lot of. It's a lot of psychology what I do.
It's
therapy.
Yeah, and it just shows that when people care, you could show we could see that you care about that client. Everyone we bring to you, you treat them like it was your child almost, even though most of them are probably older than us, and you treat them like a child.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you care that much, and it just shows when attorneys care about their clients and they go above and beyond, it makes my job 10 times easier.
Sure.
My clients thank me so much for referring you, because they feel so comfortable.
Just try to hold them like my little child.
Yeah. And it's crazy when you hear these stories of people that bought their first home and they say, it was the worst experience of my entire life, and I will never buy another house. I'm staying in this house forever because it was so miserable.
It's terrible.
And most of the time, it's because of the group of people they work with, unfortunately.
Sure.
If it was the realtor that did a terrible job and made their life miserable, and that gives the realtor a bad name, or realtors in general a bad rap.
It takes the transaction.
Right.
Absolutely.
Or if it was the realtor, or if it was, the attorney aspect, and, they just didn't keep their client in the loop, or they just really did nothing. They feel like their whole purchase was miserable. Or the banking side.
Yeah.
It's usually one of the three people. It's either to make the transaction great, it's either all three have to be perfect, or or the whole thing was miserable. There's no middle ground. It was, we just got a review and people raved about, Josh and his team, and I consider you guys part of our team.
Sure.
From Sal at the bank, who I refer on a regular basis.
It's a well-oiled machine that knows how to do it.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge part of people buying a home. They don't understand that it's a collaborative effort. It's not just one.
Everything is communication. I think you commonly hear, I call the attorney's office and I can't get anyone on the phone, or you know, I really want to speak to the attorney, but sometimes I can only speak to the paralegal. Every client's different, and that's sort of.
And that is horrendous, because I'm dealing with that right now. This deal that I'm pulling under contract right now in Bethpage, and both attorneys, you deal with their paralegal, and it's like,
I love paralegals. They save
they
my
know
life
great.
every day.
right.
But legal matters should
But when
be
you have to
handled by
when the
legal
contract's been sent out for
professionals.
2.5 weeks and nothing's moving, and every time you try to get an attorney on the phone, you can't. It literally makes my seller is like livid. He's like, they're signing or are we moving on? You know, and I'm trying to tell him, listen, you know, I'm hearing this from one side, this from another. It's like, you know, crazy.
Right.
And then I deal with you on deals, and it's like, I don't even call you because I just wait for you to call me because I know it's gonna happen. Like, it just makes my life easier. You know,
yeah.
I don't have to follow up. I know when things are moving, or if things aren't moving,
Sure.
I'm gonna get a call, or I just call you and be like, hey, what's going on with this? And like, we know the answers. It's not like I have to go through, you know, 7 steps before I can speak to the attorney.
I think what the biggest thing I find is, and part of the biggest challenge of my day is playing defense. You know, the emails, the phone calls, the texts, everything. It feels like it's coming at me sometimes all constantly. So to me, if I can tell the lender, the realtor, and the other attorney what we're up to proactively, everybody appreciates that. And then that's 3 less defensive emails I have to send later.
Right.
So it's hard though. I see, I mean, in this market,
Yeah.
you're only as good as fast as you can move.
Right.
And I think that's a challenge I'm finding now. I have to protect the client, even if you have to move a little slower
Right.
to do that.
And they're always, you know, every realtor, I mean, including myself, because, you know, you're talking to the seller,
Sure.
and you have 5 offers on the table,
Yeah.
and, you know, this person just squeaked out enough to, you know, get the house basically, you know, compared to these other offers, and they want it done. They want the inspection the next day. They want the contracts sent out the same
Don't
day.
even ask about the inspection. If you have a repair you need, you can move right. I had that today.
Yeah, they're just
Don't
saying
ask for
on to the next.
repairs.
It's
Okay.
crazy, but it just shows, like, you know, for example, like, unfortunately, like this house we just listed, it was not a hot house. It needs updates, it needs this, it needs that. It was priced a little high, and it didn't have crazy action. So the one offer that we have, contract's been out for 2 weeks, and, you know, they're just waiting it out because that's the best offer that they received, and they don't want to lose it. So they're kind of giving the rope. But the houses that are hot right now, which is probably 95% of this market right now, they want things done yesterday. And the attorney is probably the biggest factor on speeding things up or slowing things down.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
having somebody like, I give clients your personal cell phone.
Yeah.
Like,
you
you hate me for it, but I do.
Listen, it works. It works.
You know, and they love that though. So
my big thing is assembling your professional team. I say that all day long.
yeah,
Have your
100%
lender ready. Have your realtor ready. I preach buyer agent all the time because I think that that's a very misconceived concept in this industry. And have your attorney ready. And then one of my favorite parts, I should say, is shopping with the buyer. I love when buyers send me houses and say, "What do you think?" And I'm like, that looks like it's an illegal structure. You know, I can help. I can help
Right.
from the beginning, and the transaction has a better chance of getting to a closing when we're all involved in the beginning.
agreed.
And I say that all day long.
No, 100%. So somebody wants to reach out to you, you know, they like what they're hearing. What's the best route getting in contact with you? Where are you guys located? You know, give it all. Where do they find you? Instagram, give it all.
Sure. So Instagram is Long Island Real Estate Attorney. I have a lot of fun on there. Lots of posts, lots of really cool client reviews, awesome things that people say after the closing, which is always fun. And I think, you know, the best thing I always say is I would love if you could refer me. There's no better way to see how somebody does than after the closing what they say to the attorney.
Right.
At the end.
Then the real truth comes out of what they thought about you.
Then the real truth comes out. So Long Island Real Estate Attorney on Instagram. All of my contact information is there. Email is always the best way just because it's everywhere. If
Right.
I'm home, there's email. If I'm at work, there's email. And then you give out my cell phone to everybody that you've ever met. So I'm always reachable. And I think that's kind of the beauty of it. It's however you want me or don't, right?
Mhm.
If you don't
Of
want
course.
to be contacted constantly with updates, I'll call you when we're ready to close.
Close
And
you when you're ready, and
I'll
that's
let
it.
you know.
And then, you know, just so they'll know, and then where are you guys located now? Because since you guys moved,
Yep,
Where-
54 Merrick Avenue, right in Merrick, right by Ralph's is the way I always explain it.
who doesn't like Ralph?
Right, everyone loves Ralph's. Just north of the train station, so super accessible.
Awesome. Well, you know, I appreciate, you know,
Thank
taking the
you.
time coming on.
Absolutely.
You know, again, if you're looking to buy, sell a home, give me a call, 516-732-6398. Again, Josh Hanna from Team Handler Realty over at Exit Realty Premier. And, you know, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.